Erik Beimfohr is officially back from the dead. He has risen back to the depths of this mortal plane. And what I've decided for today is I am going to put him in the hot seat and we are going to rank these players that are getting hyped up through preseason and see how much we can make him sweat. Erik, how are you feeling, my friend?
Well, I was feeling pretty good because I'm kind of excited about this show topic. And then you said you flipped the switch on what we were going to do, and this is going to apparently be miserable for me. I thought we were done for the short term with the streams where we make ourselves feel miserable. Oh, I guess this is just you making me feel miserable as opposed to us eating too many hot dogs or whatever.
Well, we don't have to eat anything today, which is the important thing at all. So that's important, but you'll see when we get to it. What have you been, other than like these players that are getting hyped, what have you been looking at throughout this preseason? What has like kind of caught your attention?
So I'm glad you asked like kind of that specific question, because I think it's a little bit twofold. And you see a lot, if you're in our little bubble, right, in which if you're watching this, you're probably into fantasy football, you're into best ball, you're drafting best ball teams, you're following all these smart people on Twitter. We're all obsessing. I am too, obsessing over like almost every little detail, right? We're reading all the camp reports. I said this, I think the last time I was here or on a different show, you said it perfectly a month ago or something like that you're like, I feel like I just watched the entire Jaguars training camp practice just from being on Twitter, right? Because there's just every play in 7-on-7 and 11-on-11 and everything is like being put out on Twitter. And so there's so many conclusions being drawn. And of course, there's valuable information, right? We'll talk about plenty of that, guys running as the fourth running back that were, not expected to be the fourth running back, etc. But what I'm really honing in on even more than just seeing who's playing with the ones and some of that stuff is kind of how everyone else is treating each one of these situations. And so, I'm of course being very mindful of if this is actually changing the outlook, and some of these guys we will get to, guys that are getting hyped, and then maybe some of the guys that are getting hyped that are dragging down their teammates, like in the Chiefs example. But I'm more so being like, are people, again, another Chief, are people really gonna knock Travis Kelce because he didn't play every snap with the starting lineup? Are people really gonna knock? Yeah, are people really gonna knock? And I'm not saying they aren't, whatever, but I understand why someone is talking about that. It's fine to discuss and bring up, but if we're gonna react to it, right? If the market's gonna react to it and push this guy down, or vice versa, push this guy really high up when there are still concerns, I'm kind of reading how people are reacting more so than just, I think that's kind of the big difference in how we should handle it. Like, are people going to, give me the opportunity to draft? We'll probably talk about some of these types of situations, but like Antonio Gibson, I was not drafting him one bit, but one of his teammates is getting a lot of buzz. And now it's setting up a situation where maybe I am kind of changing my approach to these things. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it, as opposed to like, oh yes, he's running with the ones, I got to draft him now.
Pete and I got Josh Jacobs about 50 picks past ADP on Friday night and a $250 draft. And it felt right. So like, and then it feels even more right when you see Kenyon Drake getting released, because now you're like, well, now it's Jacobs and Zamir White. Don't tell me Amir Abdullah, you psychopaths. Like, that's not happening. That's not going to be a thing. So it's like, you're to your point, you're getting some value on players like that because of overreactions. Some of it might be valid. Antonio Gibson might just be a bust, and we'll talk about it. But you can also play the data to your advantage. So I did this in the Discord last night just to tease everybody, because everyone was talking about Kyle Pitts last night, and rightfully so. But I was like, oh, are we really drafting a third rounder that only got one target last night? Right? Like, so you can twist data to fit your narrative if you really want to. Now that's a false narrative, and that was more me poking fun. But yeah, so it's sifting through the data and letting people speak it to whatever point they want to make, right? Let's give Matthew Berry some props. He used to do this all the time. He probably still does it, where he'll give you player A and player B, and player A will always look, way better, and player B will look awful. And player A is, I don't know, who's like the worst running back you remember, like last year, Peyton Hillis, and player B's, like top end Christian McCaffrey year. So like that's the stuff that you have to really pay attention to. It's like who's pushing a narrative, who's not, like what data are we actually caring about? And before we get into this tier list, the other thing I have to ask you, what is it like? How do you feel being a newly minted MLB best ball thought leader?
Oh yeah. Well, so it's funny you say that. I'm almost kind of sad you brought it up, because my individual teams, I don't know, I didn't draft a lot, right? Like maybe 20, something like that, 15, 20 teams, something like that. I only got 4 through. So my own teams were just dog shit, horrible, pathetic advance rate, right? I took huge stands. I turned my 0 RB card into a 0 pitcher card and drafted all these
advanced card. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I turned into a 0 pitcher guy and drafted all these late round pitchers, and they were all hurt or dog shit or whatever. And so I only have a couple of live teams, and I don't feel very optimistic about it. But we can market it as our teams, including yours and Daigle's. That's the real skill, to be able to draft a team that advances when you're drafting 3 other teams at the same time. So I'm taking it as a W on MLB season.
I drafted 3 teams total. 2 of them were the draft Cathlon teams, and all 3 advanced. So
you should stick to baseball, bro.
So MLB thought leader is all I'm saying right now. So, all right. Do we want to get into this tier list? Because we usually run a little long on these, so we should probably.
Yeah, and I would like to keep it to about an hour this time, as opposed to an hour and 45 minutes when we do it the other times.
All right. So here's the twist. I originally had 5 categories for this, and I was thinking about it earlier today. And I am not going to let either of us middle anything. So there are only 2 categories this time. There is all aboard the hype train, and there is also baha, no, this is overrated. So as you can see, the middle one is null, which means don't try to middle it, you cowards. And that's where we're going with this, because I don't want to middle anything on this. I want this to be strictly us making a stand on these players. So
I like it.
That's what we're gonna do.
All right, who's up first? So really quick, the entire premise, right, was just generally there's probably some guys, somebody in the chat might say, oh, this guy's getting hype and you didn't mention him. We kind of tried to hit the most generally notable guys and kind of most fantasy relevant guys as well that are getting fantasy hype. And in particular, if you've been drafting, over these last several days or whatever, some of these guys, where they're going in drafts is wild. So we'll talk about that too.
Yeah. And like you said, this is all mostly rookies, some second year, some other players here and there, but I think it's like mostly rookies, second years, and maybe Christian Kirk is the outlier one as well. Just because he started getting a little bit of hype this week, more so, which is sad for me. But that's what we're going to be going through. So we're going to kick it off with Brandon Aiyuk. And I thought this one was interesting because when you sent me this name over, I was like, why are you throwing Brandon Aiyuk in there? And he's one of those guys that I hadn't even realized has just been rising up round by round by round. And then I went into a draft after you sent me this last night, and I was like, oh yeah, holy shit. Brandon Ayuk's like in the 6th round again all of a sudden. and you were getting him what, like at least the 10th, 11th to start, maybe further. I don't remember, but it's been a slow drip of him just moving up up the board. And I was like, yeah, I didn't even notice that he was moving up so much.
He's definitely that. I remember, I'm trying to pull up the ADP, not that big of a deal while we're talking. But getting, I don't know, let's say at like the 8-9 turn, getting like Lance Aiyuk stacks. It was like, and now obviously Lance is in the 6th round, but Aiyuk has gotten there too. You can't even stack them up together because it wasn't so much preseason. So he's a kind of maybe a smidge of an outlier compared to some of these guys. It's not, I mean, he hasn't played in the preseason. It's been just camp and everyone talking about like, he might be the best player on the offense. Him and Lance are, throwing together during the offseason. And so we're kind of back to last year, Brandon Aiyuk. I guess the difference is he is still technically the cheapest of the 49ers guys. But I will say I'm pretty much all aboard the hype train with Brandon Aiyuk. And part of it is because he is still that cheapest. We've kind of flipped last year. Kittle was technically more expensive than Brandon Aiyuk, but really not by that much. And now you have Debo in the 2nd round and Aiyuk in the Kittle in the 4th or 5th. And Aiyuk is the guy who absolutely could just be, the best fantasy player, I guess, outside of Trey Lance on this offense. Or technically, if Lance is not very good, it could be Brandon Aiyuk. And so I'm buying it. And he hasn't kind of crossed a line where I think it's too much yet. Some of these guys have, but he, in that 6th round or whatever, there's been guys who've fallen out of there and guys who've risen up out of there over the course of the offseason. And so he's kind of settled into a range now where I do like those quarterbacks that go there, but he's in this kind of wide receiver breakout on an offense I'm trying to target that I'm still buying him. And I think it's kind of like a post-hype sleeper type thing where last year we were excited about him late rookie breakout. We're excited about him last year, obviously going at his egregious ADP. And now it might just be this year was actually the year to buy him.
So I just checked my exposure across all tournaments with him, and I'm at 15% with him. So while I'm thinking about it, he's probably at the absolute highest level that I'm going to draft him at. So once he starts to get a little higher than he is, maybe just to reiterate, Erik, we are not allowed to pick the 3 null tiers. It is either you're in or you're out. No middling on this. No Jack Settleman flat exposures across the board type deal going on here. That's what the 3 null ones are. So it's either all aboard the hype train or overrated. So I will give this one all aboard the hype train, but like he is literally at the ceiling of where I want to draft him at. Once he moves up a little bit more, I'm out, and as my exposure is going to drip down a little bit, I'm fine with it. Like I'm fine with not drafting him anymore, especially when I'm already at 15% exposure rate.
But I think that's also he's a good example of that kind of thing. And we'll probably talk about some more guys that are like that, where he's still fine. I'm still okay drafting him, and I've been drafting him. We will reach a point probably if it keeps going up to where there's just other guys. And that's the nice thing about the offseason is you can still kind of chase this guy that you're excited about into ranges that still make sense, but then eventually you can move on, and now you're going to get a different guy, right? I haven't drafted much, I don't know, DK Metcalf or something, but if we start getting him falling and vice versa, you can kind of manipulate just the ADP in your portfolio.
All right, let's get into the Houston Texans running back Dameon Pierce. Where I think the thing we should add too is we should add our exposures as we're talking about these players, just to tell people where we're already at with them as well. So personally, I'm already at 9% exposure on Dameon Pierce, which is pretty, I can't be overweight and underweight on everybody. There's some people that I got to be sort of in that middle on, but I was taking more of him, especially because he was my bring back for a lot of my Jag stacks. When I could get him a lot later. It's a little bit tougher to pull that trigger now because he's getting into a range of running backs that I'd rather have. Because he's getting close to that, like Singletary, Damian Harris, and I'd rather have all those guys. And when he's the last one left, I guess maybe, but for me, he's currently overrated. He's moved up too high.
Yep, I think I'm the same. I have 7% Dameon Pierce at an average ADP of 119 in Best Ball Mania, and his ADP right now is 95. And so kind of similar to what we talked about with Aiyuk a little bit. I understand the hype. There was kind of the Texans really needed somebody to emerge. He's the young, exciting rookie. But at the end of the day, he's not going to play every snap. I understand he's the one getting the hype, but we're still talking about a guy who's going to share some work on one of the worst offenses in the NFL. And he wasn't that good of a prospect. He looks good. I agree. I don't have any really negative things to say about Dameon Pierce, but like, it's one of those, which we're going to get into some more of those guys on this list for sure, where it's like, I understand the hype and it's fine that he's risen. I think he should have risen, but it's a running back on the Houston Texans who's still probably going to, Rex Burkhead's not going to play 0 snaps. Maybe Marlon Mack's not going to play 0 snaps, or somebody else. Maybe they sign somebody, I don't know. And so I think we should just be realistic about that. I'm at my 7%. I'm probably not going to draft him anymore.
So just can you say what your average ADP was on him?
119.4.
All right. So my average, I have him. I'm just going to look at my Best Ball Mania 3 exposures, and my average ADP on him there is 124.83, basically. So I'm 10% exposed to him there. Like, for me, everything you just said hits the nail on the head. Like, the Houston Texans, how much do we really want to get on that train, right? Dameon Pierce might be great, but he might not be able to show it this year. So he's got an uphill battle just based on a lot of different things this year. I liked him when we could get him late, but yeah, I think he is definitely becoming too overrated at this point. This might be an interesting conversation. Where are you on Romeo Doubs? Doubs.
Yeah, which is really funny. Here I'm about as excited for, and taking as strong of a stand on Romeo Doubs as he was with not telling people how to say his actual last name. I don't know if anybody hasn't heard that story. In college, they called him Dubs, and that's why. So if you listen to a lot of like content providers, they'll probably say Dubs because his like college announcers and stuff called him Dubs, and he was like too nice to tell them that it's actually Dobbs. Now everybody knows it now, and so they say it correctly. But it's another one. I feel like we've kind of jumped the shark a little bit here. I think it's okay. I'm looking at his ADP is 127. I have not drafted him in Best Ball Mania 3. I took him a couple times on DraftKings, very little. So I have almost 0 Romeo Doubs. It's one of those where I admit that honestly, if I had it to do over again, of course, he would be a guy I would have mixed in more in the late rounds. But my general stance was, this is a rookie on the Green Bay Packers. Rodgers has not only has Rodgers like confirmed like all of our possible issues with Romeo Doubs, he's also went out and said, if it were up to me, it would be Lazard and Watkins and Cobb that are playing, right? And there's just only so much to go around in Green Bay, and we have a lot of issues with the Aaron Rodgers thing, and we know he's the wide receiver 4, like going into season. Now you're drafting the Green Bay wide receiver 4. Like, we're drafting the Green Bay wide receiver 4, who was a 4th round pick, ahead of the 10th overall pick in the NFL draft, who's the wide receiver 3, maybe wide receiver 2 on his offense. We're drafting him in front of, multiple 1st round picks. And so it's just kind of that issue where if I had been drafting him before, I admit maybe I might say a smidge differently, but I just think there's a lot of negatives now kind of at this new 10th round price ish where he's going, and the kind of risk and stuff isn't baked in. He has a freaking teammate that was drafted 2 rounds ahead of him that only because he was injured is, getting plummeted down the board. And who's to say Christian Watson isn't the 4th wide receiver on this team, even though Doubs does look promising. And so I'm pretty much out on him.
Well, all those things you said about Rodgers is stuff that he said, but then yesterday or the day before, I can't remember the exact day, he came out and said that Romeo is going to have to come out and play at a different level than other wide receivers that were rookies because he's shown it. And his trajectory is going to be different than rookies that you've seen in the past. And the 2 things that stood out to me in that, and this is like waffling back and forth from Rodgers, where He says he wants, all these guys
Yeah.
that are built in the Dust Bowl to play. And then you have Romeo Doubs that he's like, well, now I kind of think he's going to be the one to produce. What caught my attention about it, though, is he didn't bring up Christian Watson in that sentence.
Yeah. Well, he hasn't played.
True.
So he doesn't know.
But he doesn't know. But it's like, now we know how Aaron Rodgers is with that like rapport situation. Christian Watson hasn't been able to build that with him. And it sounds like Rodgers is ready to go to battle with Romeo Doubs now. So I'm not saying he's going to be the wide receiver one in Green Bay. I do think he's getting ticked up just a little bit too far to draft. So my exposure right now in Best Ball Mania for him is 6%. So I'm a little underweight on him, but my average ADP is 178 and his current ADP is 127. So I was grabbing him 18th round, 17th round a lot earlier. I'm probably mostly out on him right now, but what I will say is if I do, I think I have 28 Best Ball Mania teams left, maybe. If I decide to do a Rodgers stack, I won't look past him just because his ADP moved up. But I'm literally only looking at him. He's not going to be a one-off for me. He's either going to be part of a Green Bay stack or a bring back from Minnesota. And that's probably it. So I would say I'm no, because I think like in order to get aboard the hype train, you need to be able to be comfortable taking that player as one of your one-offs, right?
Yep. And I think that's another thing. Talked about this a little bit on one of the recent shows where it's like, I don't think he's at an ADP that he's undraftable in terms of the rise, right? Like, well, he's probably maybe getting a little bit close, but I'm not sure he keeps going up anymore. I think you can still take him, right? I would just be smart about how I did it, like you mentioned. And I just generally think the most likely outcome is that there's other guys that, have cleaner paths to upside seasons kind of around his cost as his cost is now. I like I said, I wish I probably had been drafting him a little bit more. The one thing I would say is people are really trying hard. This thing has come out a little bit. There was the one, right, that he had lunch with him or whatever. It was apparently not true. Roe is in the Discord that was basically saying this was bullshit. A lot of players, Rodgers, I guess, sits by himself at lunch and kind of like waits to see who comes and sits with him to talk one-on-one with people, which is also is like, we should take a step back and be like, Aaron Rodgers is full of shit. The dude eats clay and like.
I was going to ask you, what do you think an Aaron Rodgers lunch consists of?
Are they eating mushrooms or something while they're sitting there? Like, I mean, like you said, talk about Aaron Rodgers waffling. Like Rodgers probably doesn't remember half the shit he's saying because he's all, jacked up on God knows what. And so anyway, I just think, if I'm weighing kind of all the factors where he costs right now, there's some other guys I would rather take, but I don't really. I probably have the least strong take, honestly, on him out of all these guys, because I do see like there's paths. Him kind of like being a big time breakout rookie, and I those are the kinds of guys I like.
My name is Aaron Rodgers, and I only eat the bark of trees that I remove with my own hands. That's what I assume happens with Aaron Rodgers. So it sounds like we are going to the Bahaha no category.
Yeah, I'm in there. Yeah.
So this comment says there was a positive soundbite where Rodgers said he told Watson to do something off script in the huddle. Oops. And Watson did it perfectly. Take it with a shaker of salt. So that is like, okay, he did something good once in practice. Again, he hasn't, it's great that he did that, but we read too much into these things sometimes. It feels like it goes back to that. I've seen every Jaguars snap that there ever has been.
Yeah.
All right, here's a fun one based on some of your priors before the season began. I want to see where you are now. Kenneth Gainwell. Yep.
It is funny because I was really high on Miles Sanders when he was super cheap, and then he rose up. And there was that little funny period of Miles Sanders where he didn't get the first snap with the ones or whatever, and we did like you said, we did the panic freak out thing, and then the coach even comes out the next day and is like trolling everybody, like, see, he's the starter, he got the first snap, he's like, see, he's with the ones or whatever. But I've been on Gainwell too. It's just an offense and backfield specifically that I'm really trying to be on. It's the best offensive line in the league with an elite running quarterback, probably a little bit run heavy team. I've been on these guys. I have slightly backed off of Gainwell a little bit. Sorry, I forgot to look up my and I'm doing, I think you said you're doing BBM. I'm doing BBM too. So you can see how heavy I am on the Eagles. I have 23%. I've done 95 teams so far in BBM. I have 23% Gainwell and I have 19% Sanders. So it was one of those where I was smashing Sanders early on when he was going like pick 100 and something. Yep. He rose up and Gainwell was really cheap. And then I was just smashing Gainwell on all these 0 RB teams. And now Gainwell's risen and Sanders is falling. So now it's probably going to flip back again. But I'm like kind of in on Gainwell, but I think people are also like not really super interested in hearing the concerns around Gainwell. Like
I'm not.
We're judging. Yeah. And I get it. I get it. But people are judging Travis Kelce for not playing every snap or judging Rojo, rightfully so, judging Rojo for playing with the fourth string or whatever offense. And then Boston Scott was playing over Kenneth Gainwell in the last preseason, but it's like, I don't care about that. He's Kenny Gainwell. I'm excited for him. And so here's a cop-out answer. He would definitely be somewhere in the middle for me if we were at, doing this how we were going to do it before. But I'll say I'm still absolutely in on Kenny Gainwell. I want to be genuine and say I'm still going to draft him. So he would definitely go all aboard the hype train.
Did you get to watch the Big Dog draft yet that I did with Overzet? I know it was on a Friday night.
No, not yet.
There was a side bet made in this draft for $100 between Peter Overzet and myself. And I took Kenny Gainwell straight up versus Miles Sanders, half-point PPR for $100 that he's going to outscore Miles Sanders this year.
That's a little fucking aggressive.
And so I am all aboard the hype train, baby. We are going nuts on Kenneth Gainwell. Although I can't draft him anymore because he gets sniped every time.
Yeah,
I go to set up
people
my
love
Gainwell.
him.
Yeah, of all the players that I've noticed get sniped, Gainwell is getting taken like aggressively. So right now I have a 13% exposure to him with a 145 ADP. His current ADP is 129, and that's just going up. I'm still going to grab him when I can because he's still in like that next pocket of running backs that I'm comfortable of taking him in. But you have to be slightly aggressive to get him now. You're not going to get him at ADP. He is going before. So you have to be like cognizant of that fact. But for the moment, I'm still all aboard the hype train. I want to get that number up. Terrence says a running back named Gainwell. It's in the name. Exactly. Sanders, quicksand, can't move. Like, how do I lose this bet?
He's the same last name as Barry fucking Sanders. I think.
Who led the league in getting caught from behind on long runs.
Oh, for fuck's sake. We're really spinning this hard. If we're knocking Barry Sanders, I think we need to move on to the next guy.
All right. This one is quite interesting. I actually had a pick pop up in one of my slow drafts right before we went on, and I wanted to bring this up. We're going to talk about George Pickens, who we kind of made the cover boy of this. And I had a choice for my fifth wide receiver, and sitting next to each other was Chase Claypool and George Pickens. And I chose Chase Claypool because you people are psychopaths. Look, George Pickens looks good. He's playing for the Steelers, who are great on, selecting wide receivers. They are the quintessential opposite of the Patriots, who just can't do it to save their lives. If you get drafted by the Steelers, you're going to be a Hall of Fame wide receiver, basically. But I'm going back to the Houston Texans. I'm still a bit concerned about this Pittsburgh offense. So this rocket ship of Pickens, when I've already gotten him at a decent amount late, it's just I'm ready to just put up the stop sign on him and not take him anymore. So I have him at 8% right now at a 144 ADP.
That's so funny. I have 8% at a 156.8 ADP. So we're in basically, very, very similar buckets, both exposure wise and in the same ADP range. And I'm never going to take him again. This hype train is both one where, I was taking him, obviously. So I like this player. I loved him in college. I have zero, he's got that dog in him, all that bullshit that everybody wants to use. I don't have a negative thing to say about George Pickens. Like, as a football player, I'm excited for him, whatever. You want to use the Leone bit. We have jumped the fucking shark on this third wide receiver for a Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett led offense behind the worst offensive line in the league. Like, what have the Steelers shown us to say that first round running back, like fourth round wide receiver, rookie who has been buzzed up to the 9th round, and then Chase Claypool goes in the 10th round, right around Pickens, a tight end who goes and like same thing. They've done well drafting these individual talents, and I don't believe in the you can't draft it, like last year the Steelers were one example. Like, oh well, why is Big Ben so cheap if all these guys are so expensive? However, Pickens is the one that got steamed up to all of these guys while no one else has really fallen. And so I just cannot do it on this. There is no path to this offense being awesome. At best, at absolute best, Mitch and Pickett could make them average, maybe average, because the offensive line is not. There's no path to. Brandon Thorne has them as who's like basically the offensive line guru around our world. Has them 32nd last in the NFL. So you don't make a jump from 32nd to like the top 10. And so the quarterback play isn't making a jump from 31st or whatever to the top 10. And so if you have a bad line and bad quarterback play, I just don't see how we can pay the kind of tax on George Pickens. And so if you were taking him before, or even you were taking him as he was getting steamed, I think it was okay. I just can't. I'm not paying the tax on this dude on this offense when there's we talked about. I mean, Garrett Wilson goes 2 rounds after him or something. Like, what are we doing? Like, what's the diff? Why is Garrett Wilson going 2 rounds after him? John Dotson going 2 rounds after him on probably better offenses than the Steelers.
And to all those points you made, it sounds like we're trying to, like, our prayers are that the Pittsburgh Steelers can be the Jaguars of the Blake Bortles years, where they would just get absolutely, stomped. And then Bortles would do whatever he did for the end of the third into the fourth quarter and get 20 fantasy points, score 2 touchdowns, and still lose by three scores. Right. So,
and I get suckered into playing in like playoff DFS slates. I get suckered into playing Bortles. Like, please don't let the Steelers make the playoffs, so I'm not playing some goddamn Mitch Trubisky, George Pickens stack for a used Kia on DraftKings in a few months.
I would say there is no chance that the Steelers make the playoffs.
I don't think so either. I bet their team total under. So that tells you about it. Fits what I was just kind of talking about. Like, I think the market thinks the Steelers are much better than I do.
Yeah, and I agree. So we're pretty much in step on this. I mean, we had the same exposure for all things said.
We're kind of like shitting on a player, but it's only because of what the market has done to him. Neither of us said a negative thing. Yeah, neither of us said a negative thing about George Pickens. I'm excited for George Pickens. We were drafting him. We're at 8%, and we still, so we're technically been matching the field the whole way, except the last month or something.
Take it back, Terrence. Do not besmirch the name of Jalen Hurts in our chat today. I have too much money invested in the Eagles this year.
Right. Yep.
All right, KJ Hamler. What is your take on KJ Hamler? Because I feel like he could be polarizing.
He's very polarizing. He has to be. So I want to preface it that he has to be on the all aboard the hype train for me, because I'm kind of putting it on like, am I still drafting this guy or not drafting this guy? In general, most of these guys, I'm like not going out of my way to still target, but I'm still drafting him. So he's definitely in the top row for me. But I do think, the Tim Patrick thing is obviously what has really helped him, but we're all, it's the shit on Albert O. We've buried Albert O now. When it's kind of interesting that we're going to plummet Albert O and move KJ Hamler up, when like KJ Hamler still hasn't played. I guess he might play in this last preseason game off of a devastating injury. And I like KJ Hamler just as much as every, person who loves good prospects and all that. We don't have to talk about that. But I mean, I played him in DFS when he dropped that long touchdown this year. And so he owes me a bunch of money. But
we should write him.
Yeah, we should. Yeah, I'm sure he'll love that. He is this guy who's never done anything at the NFL level, never earned targets, never really earned snaps. He's never done anything. He had one good game that took Justin Herzig to the finals, where he caught 2 passes, in Best Ball Mania 1. And it's like he's this mythical creature that we're like treating like he's, some star. And I understand like the hype and the upside, but he's also off a devastating injury. And what they drafted Greg Dulcich, they have Albert O, who was, similar draft capital to KJ Hamler. Why can't they play multiple tight ends? Why can't they do some different things that don't require KJ Hamler being a huge part of the offense? So I'm kind of saying negative things about him just because we are probably going to reach a point where I don't want to go too crazy on him. I don't know if we'll get there or not, but I'm still drafting him because I'm still going to keep drafting Broncos and Chiefs. And that's really about it. I have 11% KJ Hamler, but it's his ADP is 155 and mine's 172. So it's kind of like, it's not the same thing as Pickens, but if we keep elevating too much, I'll just kind of cycle through new guys.
So I have 7% and I got him at 162 for my average. So I'm still grabbing him. Like he's like, first, he gets lost in the sauce for me, is what I would say. Like, he's a guy that I overlook a lot unless I'm actually looking for him. If I miss out on, Sutton, Judy, Alberto, and I have a chief stack going, which is happening obviously a lot for me, that I'm like, I have to pull up Broncos and star them and figure out what I want to do. But if I already have my Bronco lined up and I'm good to go with it, I don't even see the name. Like there's some players that you just don't see the name of. So for whatever reason, KJ Hamler's that guy for me. I'm not completely out on him. This is the ultimate middle for me. Like if we were going to middle anything, it would be this, but I think where he's at 155, it's fine I even think it's fine to one off him still. So I guess I would all aboard the hype train, but again, it's sort of like Brandon Aiyuk, where he gets a little bit higher into a certain level of wide receivers. Like if he starts touching, I guess that like next tier up, which I'm trying to think is probably what the Jarvis Landry,
Dotson.
I'm probably not going to take him. I guess I would still probably just prefer Landry, which feels gross. But I would definitely prefer Dotson over him. So I guess we can hype train him for now. And
one quick thing I was going to follow up to David's comments here. I've seen a lot of this talk about Russell Wilson and tight ends.
Yeah,
and this is a bit of a myth.
He's probably not going to make it in the NFL.
And I don't. I think we do a thing where we say we compare players that are not comparable players. And Russell Wilson has never really had good tight ends. Tell me the good tight end that he had that Russell Wilson has had that has earned that
the bones
targets.
of Jimmy Graham.
Yeah, and who was dust, obviously. We saw that Jimmy Graham was dust. But Greg Olsen, so in Greg Olsen's last season, when you want to talk about dust, that dude could barely move before he got hurt.
Yeah.
Grandpa Greg Olsen, 35 years old. Olsen, Will Dissly, and Colby Parkinson earned 107 targets, I think it was. I looked it up earlier today. The combination of those three guys earned more than 100 targets in a low passing volume offense. Will Dissly was, if you played DFS, it was 3 or 4 years ago, maybe, was like the biggest thorn in the side of everybody trying to fade trying to do he can't, do anything in a Russ Wilson offense or whatever. He was dropping 20 fantasy points every week, catching touchdowns. It's just a little bit of a myth from the tight end thing, and not because he has, like I'm saying, he has consistently thrown to tight ends, but comparing Will Dissly to potentially actually good tight ends, I don't think I want to say like if Alberto, and maybe he can't, if Alberto or Greg Dulcich can earn targets and they're good football players, Russell Wilson is going to get them the football. Like Drew Brees could get Jimmy Graham the football. I don't think Russell Wilson's going to have a problem getting the ball to good football players if they're open.
I have fond memories of stacking Russell Wilson with like either Greg Olsen or Jimmy Graham, and then him always throwing it to Luke Wilson for a touchdown on those days, and then just throwing everything that I own out the window. So thanks a lot, Russell Wilson, you short ass. Did I give my exposure on him? I think on KJ Hamler, I was at 7%.
I think so.
Just in case I didn't.
All right. We're similar there too.
Khalil Herbert. I'm still in, is what I will say. I still like Khalil Herbert. I think you can still get him at a good value. Now, when I say I'm still in, I'm as in on a Chicago Bears player as I can be with Khalil Herbert. It's a lot of runbacks on Detroit players for me when I'm getting, Amon-Ra or Hawkinson
Swift,
occasionally. Yep. Maybe I'm trying to set up a late one with Chark and Khalil Herbert, but I'm not going nutso on Khalil Herbert because we're talking bad offensive line, bad everything, right? Like RIP Justin Fields. I'm sorry what this team has done to you. We will go to the police station together and file this report because, God, I'm sick of talking about the Bears, and I was in on them in February, and I'm just so sad about what happened with them. I thought they were getting Calvin Ridley. I thought that this offense was going to be wheels up, and then I would love Khalil Herbert. For now, I'm all aboard the hype train because I think he still makes sense, but I'm not going out of my complete way to get him.
This has been the case, kind of like we talked about with Gainwell, a little bit like we talked about with maybe some of these wide receivers, Hamler being an example where, I build a lot of zero running back teams. I build a lot of early wide receiver type teams, and I live in this, 9th through 14th round running back or whatever, right? That's why my Gainwell exposure is so high because I need guys like him on a lot of the builds and the ways that I like to draft. And so Herbert was a lot like that for me early on. Same as you. We've kind of joked about some of the shitty offense and stuff. I'm not excited about the Bears either. I mean, who could be? I'm probably willing to draft them a little bit more than you are, but I'm not excited. I think Herbert got kind of steamed up as a, he's just that typical kind of contingency backup, and like other guys were just like dropping like flies in that tier of running backs, right? Rojo died, and different guys are falling out of that tier, and so he kind of got artificially steamed up a little bit. And I do think it's fair to have a little bit of concern with like Tristan Ebner. Shout out Darrington Evans if he makes the team, not because Herbert's not going to be the direct backup to David Montgomery, but Herbert was really valuable last year because he was the direct backup to Montgomery and was like an every down player when Montgomery was out. And if that's not the case, now you have like a 50 to 60% back, maybe early down back on one of the worst offenses in the NFL. And so he's still fine. He still fits the type of player that I'm kind of looking for there, but I'm not going out of my way. Same as you. I have about 9% of him at a round to two round discount from where we're at right now. But he's just kind of like whatever.
So I think the build thing's important because I just looked at my Herbert exposure, and I think we're building our teams roughly the same way quite a bit. We kind of have the same approach to building teams, and I'm at 14% on Herbert with the same round exposure. So it's a little higher than I thought, to be honest with you. I was a little shocked when I pulled it up. I mean, I can't remember every single player exposure that I have, so that's one of them. So where do we want to put him? Do we want to keep him on the hype train, or do we want to?
Yeah, hype train's fine.
All right. Let's talk about Christian Kirk. And why don't you go ahead and take this one first?
I was kind of excited for Christian Kirk, basically only because you're so high on him, and you've actually you and some other people have gotten me to come around. I wasn't drafting him early on, a little partly because again of kind of some structural things and kind of some guys that went around there. I mean, we talked about Aiyuk, right? Kirk has kind of lived in that range all year, and there was Aiyuk there, and Lance was there, and Russell Wilson was there, and that kind of stuff where I was just getting other guys. He was kind of just happenstance fade. I've come around on that quite a bit, so I'm into it. But it felt so much when he got 8 targets on a very, very limited amount of snaps, which another guy we're going to talk about was similar. But it felt so much. You remember Corey Davis last preseason, the same shit happened to him. Corey Davis had like a 50% targets per route run in the preseason. He smashed. He went from like the 11th or 12th round up to like the 7th round, all because of, he got 8 targets on 16 routes, from Zach Wilson. And we're like steaming up this like average wide receiver on a shitty offense. And that was what it felt. That's what Christian Kirk felt like to me. But I will admit, I am a little more, I think Trevor Lawrence is very clearly a more promising quarterback to be attached to. I think Christian Kirk is a guy definitely that I'm happy that I would put him in the top row, but it just felt so much like the Corey Davis thing.
What I would say in response to that is, I think the Jags know they want him to be their guy, and they are proving it, and they are trying to get that connection established as much as they can in the preseason because they just want this to carry over. The Corey Davis stuff, maybe not so much when you had Elijah Moore there. You had Zach Wilson trying to, like, it's a little different to me in that aspect. And as far as builds go, when I was getting Christian Kirk as my 5th or 6th sometimes wide receiver, that was perfect because now I'm getting a guy, because I don't expect Christian Kirk to be in my lineup every week, right? He's just not that type of player. But when he's my 5th or 6th wide receiver, and I know that he is going to be the quintessential spike week type of guy, where he's going to have games where he goes for 140 yards and 2 touchdowns, right? Like, that's just who this guy is going to be there. I'm hoping it's more frequent than it has been when he was in Arizona. Like, I'm hoping he gets the opportunity to do it a little bit more. But he is the number 1 wide receiver on a team that I think is improving, specifically in the passing game. Most likely they're going to take a step forward here or there. Might just be 1 step, might be 2 steps. And they're still going to be playing from behind, in theory, most of the time. So I think game script, everything lines up for Christian Kirk to be that perfect, still 4 or 5, 5th wide receiver on your team, because you're getting him 7th, 8th round now. And I'm still smashing him. What was your exposure on him?
Hold on, let me look. 7% ADP of 94.
I am at 40% at an ADP of 80.
Jesus Christ.
But I'm fine with it. I like it. Like, he's one of my 3 guys that I took a massive stand on. So for me, I think he's hype train, obviously. Like, I mean, when I have a guy at 40%, how can I say that I'm not hype training this guy? Right?
Yeah. No, I'm good with it though.
All right. Isaiah Likely. I'm already out. I'm already out on Isaiah Likely because he's already getting steamed up too much. Had a great preseason game. I do think that there is some looks for him in this offense this coming season. I think we have to remember who we're dealing with. We're dealing with the Baltimore Ravens. We're dealing with Lamar Jackson. When Andrews was going absolutely nuclear last year, a lot of that was with Huntley. It's not the standard Lamar Jackson offense that brought Mark Andrews along. Now, I don't hate Andrews. I'm not drafting him a ton this year because I think he's just a little overpriced. I think in the future likely might have some viability there. But when you're going to start hyping this guy up into like the 16th, 15th, 17th round, he's not really locked down on where he's going yet. I see it just kind of spraying all over everywhere, especially in the Pomeranian and stuff like that. Like, he might have went in the 14th in one of my Pomeranians. And I think we're just getting a little too excited about Isaiah Likely based on one preseason game on an offense that honestly isn't going to throw the ball that much.
The dogs got very excited for the Isaiah Likely conversation. They're over here wrestling, and that's because they know that I'm so fucking pissed about this Isaiah. Like, it was one of those things where you think that, hey, I'm trying to talk about Isaiah Likely. Zip it. Like, you would think, like, oh, like, actually in the past, before the market got so goddamn crazy over these preseason games, you would think like that, I got something right, because he's one of my guys. It's only been the last maybe 3 weeks or something like that, kind of since camp started, right? Yep. And we have this situation where Bateman and Andrews are the guys in a run heavy offense, but there's still juice to be squeezed out of somebody else. And I mean, these were 18th round picks or on DraftKings 20th round picks, right? Him, Duvernay, Prochet, etc. So, you have this situation where I was kind of I was drafting some James Prochet. Some people were drafting Duvernay. I was kind of looking for something. And I really liked Likely as a player. Like I've talked in the past, I played college football DFS. Coastal Carolina was an amazingly fun team to play in college football DFS, and he was awesome. And so it just like all came to fruition where I was like, holy shit, they want to play a bunch of tight ends. Like, why does it have to be, Duvernay? Like, we're treating it like they're a normal offense, kind of like what you said. Lamar Jackson, run heavy Ravens, but we're treating it like we got to find this other wide receiver. They probably just want to play fullbacks and tight ends and running backs and all that kind of stuff. And who fit that kind of as this younger kind of athlete like Mark Andrews was Isaiah Likely. And I was like, I think he's going to play based on all the camp reports as like almost like the third option in the passing game. Now, what does that mean? Like pure value? Not a lot. It's nothing special. He'll maybe score a couple touchdowns or something, have a couple of games that you use him in. But he also had like, what 18th round tight end do you get that like if something happens to Mark Andrews, like even I know you've drafted like some Noah Gray, there's what's Jody Fortson or whatever it was.
I grabbed some Fortson now too.
Yeah, but like we don't know really who it is. I think we kind of know with Likely that he would be the receiving preference if something were to happen to Andrews.
Yes.
And so it was just this perfect storm of like, I'm going to get overweight on this guy. I wasn't going to go crazy, but like I got to 8% in BBM, and then he has that game. And I'm like, you motherfucker, you couldn't wait like another week or just like wait one more week. And so I can get, into double digit exposure. And now he's just the guy that's like you said, I don't even know how to plan for if I want to take him. Because some drafts he goes in like the 14th fucking round. And I'm like, this is out of control. I'm like, this is absolutely out of control. And so he is the dude who I'm really excited for, but I don't know that I'll be able to draft him anymore unless I happen to get in a room where maybe he is there in the 17th and I need a late round tight end or something. I'm okay, but he just has to be in the bottom row for me, even though I'm really excited for him just because of how it has played out.
So this is a little slightly off topic, but what's his ownership going to be week 1 in these DK and FanDuel tournaments, since he's going to be min priced, right? He's got to be min priced on those sites. So people are just going to be locking him in as their tight end. It's going to be a little silly.
Yes.
I missed the boat in BBM on him. I have him in other tournaments, but I'm at 0%. He was, when I was going to start drafting him and when I did start drafting him on DK and some of the lower tournaments, he was still 18th, 20th round. I took a little break on BBM because I wanted to hold some teams back for, the late surge, because I got like 28 left now, I think, or somewhere around that. And unfortunately I missed. And now if he's going to go above the 18th round, I can't do it. I can't do it. So I have to be but it doesn't mean I'm out on him as a player. I'm just out on him as like, I personally missed the boat on this one.
I mean, and that happens. That's like one of my favorite kind of lessons, if you will, of best ball is just like, I mean, don't chase your losses, right? It's like anything in gambling. Like we missed it. I missed Romeo Doubs. So I'm not going to keep chasing him up the board. It like the chances, people will say this like really disingenuously in arguments sometimes, but in this instance, it's like totally true. Some like the odds that Isaiah Likely or Romeo Doubs are the guy you need to advance or win in week 6 or in the playoffs is so fucking low that it's like, look, we can't cover every base. We had reasons to draft other guys when we did. We missed on a guy who maybe we shouldn't have missed on. I definitely missed on Dobbs. I probably missed on Julio, but it's like, so what? Move on. Like it's not like your teams are dead. There's no guy. Remember, Derrick Henry probably was going to be the guy you needed last year. He was just shitting on everyone for like 8 weeks or whatever. And boom, he gets hurt. And no one ever talks about it anymore because he wasn't the guy that you needed, because he was, he killed your teams actually from getting hurt. So it's like, it's okay. Move on and we'll all be all right.
And if like it hurts your soul enough that you like are so upset that you missed out on a guy like Isaiah Likely, wait until the next Pomeranian pops up. Draft him at ADP there, because you're not losing any value there. So like if Eric's like sitting there like, I can't believe I missed out on Julio Jones, he can hop in the Pomeranian, draft like 3-4 shares of Julio, and know that he's not getting killed on value in that, right? So
Yep.
there's still ways to play these guys if you really want them on a team. I mean, I'm fine with not having Likely at this point on anything but what I have them on. Let's go into Isaiah. There's so many Isaiahs and Elijahs in this. It's just so many. Like, that is just the NFL name now. Let's go into Isiah McKenzie for the Buffalo Bills. And to me, I think he's won this slot job just based on everything that we're seeing and hearing and stuff. I'm wondering if Crowder even makes the team at this point.
I know, because Shakir's there.
Right. So it's almost like, what does Jamison Crowder do for this team? Right? If you're the front office, he's not doing much. So I just think McKenzie has the job, and we know that in the past, a slot wide receiver in this offense absolutely eats. Right. So I love Gabe Davis. I mean, I just love the Bills as a whole, basically. I want any of the Bills. So I'm in on Isiah McKenzie because I'm in on the Bills. Like, hard.
Yep. He's not, I don't think he's going high enough.
Probably
142.5 ADP is the starting slot. I agree with you. Maybe some people will disagree. I think he has won the slot job. I think he is an explosive player. Maybe he's not the world's best wide receiver. I know he's not the typical, he doesn't fit the mold for like anybody. He hasn't, he's not the boomer. Crowder is. Crowder was the boomer. He's been a target earner on a shitty team, super boring fantasy football guy, right? Was Jamison Crowder. So the boomer, the FFPC boomers that like to draft AJ Green and shit would like Jamison Crowder. And then like the prospect bros, the zero RB bros don't like Jamison Crowder either because he really wasn't a very good prospect. He hasn't done really shit in his NFL career besides a couple of good games. But like, I also like to lean on like when this team like the Bills shows us their hand. And they did it with Gabe this year, and they've done it with Isiah McKenzie. Like, let's just trust the Bills and this explosive athlete. Like, maybe he's just gotten better. I don't know, but the market is saying like I don't really give a shit about this guy. I know he's obviously risen quite a bit. I have 26% Isiah McKenzie at an average ADP of 161 in BBM.
Jealous.
I was taking a big stand on that, and so I feel the same way about the Bills as you. Obviously, Gabe Davis is my highest owned player. Isiah McKenzie's one of my highest owned players. I have a ton of Diggs. I don't take a lot of Dawson Knox, but I draft all the running backs. I'm even drafting Zach Moss right now. So I'm very much all aboard Isiah McKenzie.
So I'm all aboard him too. I'm not as high as you. I'm jealous of the exposure, to be completely honest. I'm only at 7%, but it's because I usually already have a bill or two by the time he comes up on the board for me. So like I already have Diggs, or I already have Gabe, or I already have Singletary. I need to start getting a little more Cook. I think that's the guy that maybe I need a little bit more of. But other than that, like, I love Isiah McKenzie. He's still, like you said, in a spot that I don't mind drafting him. I'm 7% with a ADP of 168 at the moment, which is still really good. But I don't mind wrecking that, ADP difference too much by grabbing him where he is now, because if I get locked out of Bills and I'm like, oh, I can scoop Isiah McKenzie for my bring back for Jamar Chase or T. Higgins or whoever, because I want at least some sort of stack of that game constantly, then I'm more than fine with grabbing Isiah McKenzie. So everything that we said, he's a hype train for me, without question.
He also flashed there's, I believe in it, and we probably talked about this before too. It's how I feel about Gabe. It's kind of this combination of things. It's the Bills. Who doesn't want to have guys on the Bills? Right. And then the Bills have showed us their hand with these guys, McKenzie and Gabe in particular. And then like I believe in kind of this, when you show us a skill, I believe it's Rich Rebar that has mentioned this, and it has always stuck with me. Rich says like a million smart things, but this is one of his that's one of my favorites. It's like when you show a skill, you own that skill. Right? It's like you run a 4.2 40, you're a fucking fast motherfucker. Right. Like it's like no one can take that from you. And when Gabe did that in that playoff game, and then the team committed to him, and then McKenzie really came on last year down the stretch. He had the one game against the Patriots where he made a really good defense look absolutely foolish for an entire game when Cole Beasley was out, and then earned this kind of gadget role, actually started stealing snaps from Cole Beasley, and then they commit to him. Right? They signed Jamison Crowder, but they were like, nope, McKenzie's better. Like immediately. It was
Yeah.
right away. They showed us their hand on McKenzie. And when you get this combination of things, it's like I'm buying.
Just a little side quest real quick. Since we're talking about how much like we love the Bills, just a curiosity question. Do you ever build teams that you feel really, really good about? Like you're building a team and you're done with it and you're looking at it, you're like, yes, this team, I did everything I wanted to do with this team structurally. And then you look and you're like, oh shit, I don't have any Bills, or oh shit, I don't have any Chiefs. And then like you like that dopamine hit just instantly drops off because you're like, fuck, now this isn't as good of a team as I thought it was.
This happens to me all the time because I want Chiefs and Bills are probably my two biggest priorities. It used to be Broncos, but as weird as it is with the tight end bullshit going on, I'm not like quite prioritizing Alberto and Dulcich as much, and removing Tim Patrick like has kind of made things awkward with the Broncos. There's just less options. There's no real back. I guess Hamler's the backstop, and we talked about him already. And so it is kind of the Bills and the Chiefs where I'm just like, I really would love to have at least one of both these offenses on every team. And sometimes I'll run into like, oh shit, I took Diggs and then I took Gabe and then I took McKenzie and I don't have Josh Allen, and that was a mistake. Maybe it was a mistake, I don't know. But it's something I think about maybe more than I should. But those two offenses in particular, I just think we're going to get to week 17, not because of they're going to score a lot of points in week 17, but we're going to get to the end of the year. We're going to look back and be like, yeah, dumbass, you should have taken, like, there's all these like affordable guys on the two best offenses in the NFL. Like, just draft them.
Yeah. Speaking of which, Isiah Pacheco is the way he pronounces it. New England, we pronounce it Pacheco. You want a conundrum. This guy is the ultimate conundrum because this backfield is the ultimate conundrum, right? I was grabbing him right when the hype started, so you were getting him 18th, 17th round. This guy is all over the board right now. Like, it is unbelievable, and I don't even know a player that we can compare him to that has ever come from nothing. I didn't know who he was 3 weeks ago. If we're going to be completely honest, I had no idea who this guy was. And
it's
now,
Darwin. It's Darwin, right? It's got to be Darwin Thompson.
Oh, okay, yeah. So that is a good comparison.
Which is really funny with the Chiefs thing.
Right, and so like you have this guy that like no one even knows. We're already struggling with the Chiefs backfield. We're already like, is it Rojo? Is it McKinnon? Like, what is going on in the Chiefs backfield? And then you have to just go ahead and add another layer to this backfield. And I'm just like, oh, man, I think I'm just going to stick with the passing game here. Like, I'm grabbing Pacheco in some of the Pomeranian things here and there, especially if I get locked out of some of the pass catchers, because I don't really love taking McCole Hardman too much. I mean, I have when I have to. It's like a have to play for me. But as far as Pacheco goes, I don't think I'll take him in Best Ball Mania again. I don't want to like say for sure. Maybe something arises that changes that opinion. But for now, I don't know, man. Like, you'll be sitting there and you'll occasionally be in like the 10th, 11th round, and you'll see Isiah Pacheco go off the board, and you're like, what round are we in? What's happening right now?
Yes. He's the expensive. Yeah. I like to say guys are like, like Visca's like the Kmart version of Debo, right? Like that's what I use. Like Kmart is my reference, but he's like, in terms of talent, he's the Kmart version of Isaiah Likely in terms of this team, but yet he goes 7 or 8 rounds ahead of him. I can't make heads or tails of this thing. When he first started rising, I actually talked a little bit to Pat Green, because I listened to, I don't remember if it was a Roto World show or Ship Chasing or something, and he was kind of shitting on Pacheco as a prospect, which I understand. His prospect profile looks terrible. He looks like a freak athlete that was that was really bad at football. But I was, again, because I do watch a lot of college and stuff like that, I'm not some expert, but Rutgers, his situation at Rutgers was like the worst Power 5 situation you've like ever seen. It was that bad. I mean, it was like a high school offense trying to play in the Big Ten. They were that bad. Like the worst offensive line in Power 5. I mean, they had one of the worst offenses in Division 1, and they were a Power 5 school. They would, when they would play, everybody gets like 2 cupcakes or something like that. They'd score like 35, on Missouri Baptist or something. But then but then they would go play Michigan and they would lose 65-0 and get like 80 yards of offense. And so it was one of those where like I'm not saying that means he's good, but I'm saying that means we should maybe give him a chance when the Chiefs are saying maybe there's something here with this guy. And so at first I was like, I have 3% Isiah Pacheco. So that's 3 teams, I think, in Best Ball Mania. And it's average ADP of 167. So you saw I was kind of buying the middle of the steam, basically.
Yep.
But now with an ADP of 140 and climbing, like you said, I mean, what are we doing here? Like we've reached the point of buying all the, he's not priced at his ceiling for the stupid reference that people like to say, because he could be the RB1 on the Chiefs, which has a very, very high ceiling, but we're paying for a lot of the upside is starting to get sucked out of it, right? Because the probability that him being the RB1 on the Chiefs is not very good, because they do still have CEH and they do still have Jerick McKinnon, right? And then the probability of him being the guy the guy you need late in the season, like they could keep Rojo and it just becomes one of these other situations with the Chiefs like we see every year, where like 1 week it's Darrell, 1 week it's McKinnon, 1 week it's LaShawn McCoy, 1 week it's Carlos Hyde, and so there's just a lot of risk that I guess it's technically a big hit, big miss player, but it's starting to become a small hit, big miss type of bet.
Right. We have Jimmy in the chat saying, weren't people saying these same things about Rojo when his price was the same? And I would say it's not the same exact comparison, because when Rojo was at the height of what people thought he could be with the Chiefs, he was the contingent value to CEH. If anything happened to CEH, we all thought Ronald Jones was just going to slide in there kind of and be a first and second down back.
Yeah, he could also have been a little bit of the goal line early down runner on the Chiefs, which is like, it was the perfect fit for him. We know Rojo is a good like early down in between the tackles runner. Like he's good at that. He's not good at anything else, clearly.
Right.
Like that's why he can't make an NFL team or get snaps on an NFL team. But we know a skill that he has, and we were like, holy shit, that's the one thing the Chiefs have never had. It was the perfect marriage. Pacheco, we don't even know if he's an NFL football player. He's a seventh round draft pick. It's a very different situation.
I'm at 5% on him with an average ADP of 176. And I feel pretty comfortable about that, to be perfectly honest. So I'm going to put him in the no category just because, like, who knows what the hell's going on with that ADP. And we are on to Brian Robinson, who is just coming out. It's like coming out of nowhere, but doesn't feel like he should be coming out of nowhere. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That backfield is really interesting for multiple reasons. Like Gibson is pretty much, unless he pulls an Undertaker, people think that he's absolutely dead. They bring back McKissick like with a purpose, and they also draft Robinson. What do you go in the third round?
Third round. And Gibson was a third round pick, and Robinson was a third round pick.
And Robinson's flashing, right? So I was in on him. I think he's a guy that I'm starting to get blind to. Like I was talking about earlier, I got to see what my exposure is. So I'm only at 4%, but an average ADP of 162 when his current is 130. So like, I guess I've inadvertently made that stand that I'm out on him and that he's getting too high. I didn't think I was in that camp, but the numbers don't lie. And sometimes you're making these, we've talked about this before, taking inadvertent stands that you didn't even know you were taking, like mentally, and you're just doing it.
I think I got a luck boxed a little bit into Brian Robinson because I wasn't like super on him. Mm-hmm. I'm not super on. He's a little bit similar to me to the Steelers situation as it pertains to now with this rise in ADP, where it's like, I think he's fine. I agree that he's flashed. I think he probably is going to be the goal line back and kind of split that early down role with Gibson. And then Gibson's going to be this kind of weird. What my new expectation really is Gibson is kind of going to be used as like a little bit of a weapon. I think they kind of smartly realized he can't just be this goal line back and in between the tackles grinder and all of that. And JD McKissick is a really good receiving back. And so that made Gibson a horrible pick where he was going most of the summer. But
Yep.
also now I think it's going to make Gibson a reasonable pick especially in certain structures. I have started to take him. I had zero Antonio Gibson until like 3 or 4 days ago, maybe even 2 days ago. But
Yeah.
Brian Robinson is the guy that's like, okay, we're going to reach a point where this is an early down grinder on Carson Wentz offense.
Mhm.
Like, is he really gonna, like, what's he really gonna do for us if we keep rising? What is ADP's in the almost into the 120s now? Yeah. And so I have 14% of him, I think, through sheer luck because again of the structural way, because I wasn't like going out of my way to target him, and it's a late 170s ADP. So I have like my average ADP value on him is 45 picks. So lucked out pretty well on Brian Robinson, but I think kind of the jump the shark thing, we lost some, again, Rojo and some of these guys have fallen out of that range. And then you get the guys that flashed like Robinson that just kind of just keep going because there's no resistance right at the running back position in that tier anymore for him. Pacheco, Gainwell, Zamir White, these guys, there's no resistance there anymore because we're weeding, right? We're getting that information. We're getting new information and we're weeding out all those guys that seemed like good picks in the 130s and 140s. And now we're like, oh shit, that not only that dude not a good pick, he might not make the team.
Zamir White was on this list, and I don't know how his picture got removed, but he was supposed to be one of the guys.
He's pretty similar though to Robinson. I think they're almost the same thing.
Right. I think that you're going to see Gibson and Robinson possibly meet each other really soon.
Too.
Right now, just to throw it out there since we talked about Zamir White, I have 15% at an average ADP of 190, and I'm probably good with not drafting him again.
Oh yeah.
So I think I kind of hit that one.
Way better than me. I have 8% at 173.
Yeah. So I was hitting him a lot in the 18th round early. So I feel real good about the Zamir White. Brian Robinson, like, I think to your point, I would say no right now, but with my asterisk is he's very much a structural build player.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I'm structurally building a certain way and he fits that team, yes, I'll still take him, but I'm not going out of my way to be like, oh, Brian Robinson's on board, snagging him. Right. So,
yep. He's also, just to put a bow on him, I forget who he talked about, Doubs or something like that, where it's like, he hasn't risen so much that you can't take him.
Right.
Like the difference between an 11th and 12th round pick and a 15th, 16th round pick, it really doesn't fucking matter. Especially with everything that has changed. In the draft pool, you're getting different combinations of players. So if you really like him, I would not like avoid him. And like you said, there are probably going to be structure. Like, I don't want to say I'm never going to draft him the rest of the way, because like you said, the way I build, there might just be teams that he's the best available player.
I just think he's going to be a lot more interesting to discuss in a week when him and Gibson are closer to each other.
I mean, Gibson is fucking plummeting. He's already, I haven't done a draft in the last 3 days where he doesn't fall into the hundreds.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. Like, that conversation specifically for him gets interesting in a week from now. Maybe we'll check into it, whatever we do for next Tuesday's show. And finally, we're at Wan'Dale Robinson of the Giants, your favorite team, the New York Giants.
Yeah.
Why don't you go ahead and lead us off with him?
Okay. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm getting a little spooked on the Giants. I have not been drafting him that much.
Don't you lead me astray now, Eric.
I know. I probably brought you on, just like you brought me on to Kirk, and now I guess you're still drafting. I have 9% Wan'Dale average
9%, you fucking fraud.
Yes, exactly. 9% Wan'Dale at an average ADP of 190. So I feel pretty good about I was smashing him, absolutely smashing him earlier. And then I just really quick want to check. I have 14% Saquon. So you see, I've been backing off these Giants as I was bullish on them, as we talked about in like fucking March, and I was talking about the Giants. But as Saquon has gotten up to like the 1-2 turn from the middle of the third round, as Wan'Dale has gotten into the 150s and rising, I'm not taking Galladay anymore because I'm not sure. I'm not sure if Colin Johnson's starting over Kenny Galladay based on everything we're hearing with him. And I don't know what's going on with Tony. I am still taking some Daniel Bellinger And Ricky Seals-Jones just got put on IR today. So Bellinger is definitely locked into the tight end role, if you were even worried about that before. But somebody posted something the other day that was like how I started to feel about the Giants. And it was like people started to steam up, Saquon, Daniel Jones, Tony, Wan'Dale, even Bellinger's getting a little bit of late round hype. And when you look at that offense, you're like, it's kind of what you've probably been saying about me, like, no shit, idiot, you're just not realizing this. But it was when they were so cheap, the market was like, nah, these dudes suck. Saquon in the 3rd fucking round, Wan'Dale in the 17th round, like they were so cheap. Now the market has kind of realized maybe we should buy these guys. And now I'm like, this is a Kadarius Toney, Wan'Dale, who is the second coming of Rondale Moore, gadget player offense, a San Diego State 4th round tight end, Daniel Jones, Sterling Shepard off of an Achilles. I'm just a little bit worried. So I will probably still draft him. So I have to put him in the hype train. I am excited. I think Wan'Dale's going to be a good player, but for like on Underdog, man, I don't know. I don't know how much more I'm going to get of him in the 150s and 140s where he's going.
I think I'm done with him. So my exposure is 11% right now, which is probably shocking, but I was getting him really late. So my average ADP on him is 183. So at this point, I am more than, because if I end now, I'm probably going to be at like 7 or 8% based on having like 20 teams left. Quick math, and I'm fine with that. He's, from everything we're seeing from camp reports, he is going to be like the starting slot.
Oh, he's starting
over there.
Yeah.
Like it's for sure. But again, on what type of offense? The Barkley thing I've backed off on too. And I like Barkley a lot this year, but just the way that I'm building that back end of 1st round picks, because that's roughly where you have to get him now as your 2nd round. I'm at 12% on him with an average ADP of 17.7, where he's at 14.5 right now. I wasn't on the Giants at all too much, and I'm overweight to a couple of the guys already. Tony, I'm probably average on. I don't need to look it up. Bellinger, like you said, he got sniped for me in a draft the other day in the 18th round. I had him locked up and loaded. Luckily, I went back and checked, and I was able to adjust, but I started him expecting to just be able to time out in the 18th round. And lo and behold, somebody took Daniel Bellinger for some reason on a team that they didn't need to, because that stuff's still happening, but just not a guy I would expect that with. So I guess I'm on the no right now, even though I am
put him in no
to see what he does.
But I think put him in no. The other thing with my exposure, I was actually really surprised at what it was. By higher on DraftKings, I'm not going to look it up, but is again the structural thing.
Yep.
When you got to the 17th round and you start a 0 RB team, you already got 7 superstar wide receivers. I was taking Dearness Johnson, Brian Robinson when he went in the 17th round for a while there, right? Why do I have 14% Brian Robinson and only 9% Wan'Dale? It's because I needed a fucking running back when I got to those rounds. I didn't need the wide receiver, and so he's interesting. The Giants are really interesting, but if you would have told me when we talked, I mean, we talk most weeks here, that I would be at these kind of mediocre ownership percentages on the Giants, I would have probably laughed at you, because I was really high on all of them, but they've kind of risen, and other situations have kind of cleared up or changed or whatever. And so I'm just a little lower and maybe a little bit more skittish on them than I was before.
I'm actually a little shocked with how our board turned out. We kind of split these players between both, and I had a feeling we were going to be maybe too much on the hype train side. So I think kudos to us for having the conviction to back off some of these players. I honestly, I really thought that this was going to go a little bit differently than it did. I
think we're reasonable. All I want to say is the Isaiah Likely one pained me. So that's my pet project of the year. So he's doomed, because last year that was Darrington Evans, and I guess I got up to 40% Darrington Evans, so he's not quite as doomed as Darrington was, because I was only able to get so much Isaiah Likely before he blew the roof off of his ADP. But I think this is a totally reasonable. People might nitpick or whatever, but I think it all makes sense. You notice it's really kind of the bad offenses and like a little bit of the unpredictable ADPs that are in the bottom, right? Like I mean, that's why Likely's down there. If Likely was just like, oh, he went from the 18th to the 16th, like who gives a shit? But he went from the 18th to like, I have no fucking idea when he's ever even gonna be drafted, and so I'm just not gonna worry about him. Dameon Pierce, kind of like bad offense. Wan'Dale, probably bad offense. And so I think that's a generally smart approach. And that's kind of how I would, there's an Eagle, a 49er, a Bronco, I guess the Bears up there, but a Bill, it's all the elite offenses. And then Khalil Herbert, basically up there.
Yeah. I think that going back to our conversation from a few weeks ago, sometimes you just need to simplify your thought process and then expand upon it. I think some people are still starting off to galaxy brain and not starting at the fundamentals and then galaxy braining, right? So I think this is pretty much a good exercise in these players, and it's going to help me going forward for my last little round of drafts. We're there. We're at the end. Like, we are a few weeks away from being done from drafting. We're now MLB thought leaders. It's real interesting stuff. So let me put you on the spot one more time before we get out of here.
Yep.
Give me your top 3 exposure players in Best Ball Mania right now.
Oh, that's easy. Yeah, can you guess them? I want you to guess first.
Oh, I don't know who your top 3 are. I don't know if you're going as nuts on certain players like I am, so it's a little tougher.
Pretty close.
Is it Gabe Davis?
Of course, 44% Gabe Davis through
44.
95.
Wow, I love it.
Through 95.
That's what I'm here for. That is what I'm here for. I'm here for the stands.
So
right?
one of my also favorite. This is how I feel. This is I always feel like this, but this is how I feel even more passionately right now. That like we make this whole best ball thing out like. Everybody takes themselves way too seriously. God knows I do. I mean, the shit that I'm talking about 4 or 5 days a week is kind of ridiculous. Young me would just be so embarrassed about the things I, speak to internet strangers about. But we all take this shit too seriously. Like, can't get over X% of certain player. And, this guy's priced at his ceiling and this, that, and the other. And it's like, let's just have some fun. And Gabe Davis is fucking fun for me. In my opinion, he's a guy that I want to watch, that I want to have money invested in. And if I don't win $1 million, or $2 million, I'm probably not going to win it anyway. At least let me have a little bit of fun. And Hayden Winks from Underdog was in the Discord today, basically saying something about like, this is supposed to be fun at the end of the day. Remember that. And I believe that, and that's Gabe is one of those guys. Kyle Pitts is actually my 4th. So I was going to cheat and put him 4th. It was the same thing with Kyle Pitts, and I'm probably still he's getting steamed a little bit now because of the one catch, which like you said was funny. But I'm still gonna draft Kyle Pitts because guess what? Kyle Pitts is really fucking fun to have on your teams. Like getting your Jarvis Landry ADP value. Like that's not the life that I'm about in these drafts, and so just wanted to hit that because there was a couple good like Bradley is here saying love the show, appreciate all the time and effort you guys have poured in, and I think and James is here showing up to say what's up, and I think I hope that shows through, that we're here. Like you're taking a big stand on your takes. You have tons of Mahomes, and my second highest exposure player is MVS, who is one of your highest exposure players. And the same thing, like MVS catches 2 bombs for a touchdown. Like that sounds fun to me from Patrick Mahomes, so I'm taking some of those stands.
All right. So you have MVS, you have Gabe Davis,
Darrell Henderson.
That's an interesting one. I would have not guessed that one.
Yep. Zero RB. I mean, a 0 RB bro with Darrell Henderson. My average ADP is 138.65, and I have 33% Darrell Henderson. So he was fitting into that, that bucket where it was like, I don't know, I'm just going to take Darrell Henderson every time until he rises, and he kind of has now. So
I'll give you my top 5 before we get out of here. Who do you think's number 1? I'll let you get that guess. You're going to be close.
Is it Kirk?
No, he's number 4.
And 4? Jesus Christ. You have 3 guys higher than Christian Kirk?
Well, he's actually tied for 3rd. I have 2 guys at 40%.
So Mahomes is one of the 40 then, or have you gotten over that on Mahomes?
Mahomes and Kirk are tied at 40, so they're like basically tied at 3.
Well, then MVS is your highest?
48%. He's my highest.
Love it.
Dearness is at 41%.
I knew it. Dearness is my eighth highest.
Mm-hmm. And my number 5 is Javonte Williams at 26%.
Now we're talking.
Which I want. I just want to pound him. I just in the second round. I just want Javonte Williams.
God damn it! You have more. I only have 19%. Now I'm gonna have to catch up. I'm gonna have to catch up on Javonte because I can't have. Look at this. Mike Robb is in here guessing some pretty accurate takes here. Mahomes and
like you said, it's fun. I want to root for guys. I can now root for Patrick Mahomes and MVS every week because I'm like, I have a high clip of these guys, and no matter what, I'm going to be able to root for these guys, right? So like that's what I'm all about too. Like I'm taking stands on the guys that I want to root for this season and just have fun playing best ball.
And you're not taking stands on what you think are bad picks, right? I mean, it's Patrick fucking Mahomes going in the 5th round, right? I actually think the Chiefs, this might be like the best Chiefs offense. I
was thinking about this earlier today. We'll talk about it later, but yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
We have a follow-up show to do at some point in these next couple of weeks that we can talk about it later. But these are high upside shots. If it doesn't work out, we'll do some playoff drafts. We made the NHL
next year.
We made NHL and NBA playoff best ball. We advanced in those, so we might as well just carry it over. More Mahomes and MVS stacks in those.
Absolutely. So with that being said, for myself, for Erik Beimfohr, we will see you soon. Peace.